I worked the night shift at a small, historic hotel tucked into a quiet Pennsylvania town. You know the kind. Creaky floorboards, red velvet wallpaper that's older than your grandparents', and those brass key rings with big plastic room numbers dangling like something out of a horror movie. The place was barely alive during the day, but at night it felt haunted. I don't mean literally. I'm not one of those people who jumps at shadows. But that building had a mood. Like it breathed slowly when the lights were low. Like it watched you. Still, the job was easy. Most nights I sat behind the front desk, watched old TV shows on my phone, and occasionally handed out towels. But one night, around 2 o'clock in the morning, a woman came in from the storm. She looked like she'd stepped out of a black and white photo. Thin, soaking wet, her long black coat clung to her like a second skin. Her hair hung in clumps. Her hood was up, shadowing most of her face, but I saw her lips, pale, cracked, pressed into a hard line. Room. Sure, I said, startled. Credit or debit? Cash. She handed me a folded bundle of bills. Exact change for one night. No ID, no name. Just that same flat stare. I should have said something. Hotel policy was clear. But you know, something about her made me forget every rule I knew. I handed her the key to room 313. She didn't thank me, just turned, dripping onto the lobby carpet as she moved toward the elevator. I remember watching her go, struck by how quiet her footsteps were, like she barely touched the ground. Half an hour later, the phone rang. Room 306, front desk. Yeah, someone's singing. Singing? In the hallway. A woman. It's creepy as hell, man. She's just walking back and forth, singing some old lullaby. Real slow. Off key. I apologized, told him I'd check it out. I left the desk and rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway lights flickered slightly as they often did, but I noticed something strange as soon as I stepped out. It was colder. Not freezing, but noticeably cooler than the rest of the hotel. And then I heard it. Soft, broken humming. The melody was off, jagged like an old record skipping. It echoed faintly down the corridor. I followed the sound. My skin crawled as I passed each door. Then I stopped in front of room 313. The humming was coming from inside. I knocked gently. "Mom, is everything all right?" The humming stopped. Silence fell, thick and sudden. Then a sound, a low, wet sobbing came from within. Not loud but heartbreaking. The kind of cry that makes you instinctively lean closer, your body tensing like it knows something's wrong. I leaned down and looked through the old-fashioned keyhole. All I saw was red. Not just red, glowing red. Like someone had placed a candle directly behind the door, but the light pulsed slightly, as if it were alive. I knocked again. "Mom?" Nothing. I returned to the front desk and, marked the room for a wellness check in the morning. But when housekeeping called me at 9 a.m., they were panicked. There's no one in room 313. It's completely empty. No bags. Bed untouched. But the mirror. There's something on the mirror. I went up myself. Inside, the room smelled like wet iron and lavender. The bed was made, the window slightly ajar, and on the mirror, scrawled in black, sticky streaks, was one word: alone. We checked the camera footage. At 2:03 a.m., the lobby feed cut out, just static, for 5 minutes. When it resumed, there was no sign of the woman ever leaving. I asked the owner if room 313 had a history. She sighed. That room's cursed. Back in '82, a girl named Eliza booked that room on her wedding night. Her groom never showed. They found her the next morning, hanging from the chandelier. I swallowed. The weird thing is, guests have reported seeing her for years. Wet hair, black dress, crying, humming lullabies. Most sightings happen during storms. She looked at me hard. "Don't assign that room again." I nodded. But the next night I couldn't resist. I took the elevator up alone, just to see. When I reached the door to 313, the hallway felt colder again. My breath fogged. I leaned in and looked through the keyhole. Red. Still just red. But then, something shifted. A shape moved in front of the keyhole, blocking the light. A pale face came into view, slowly turning toward me. The skin was grey, the eyes were black, and the mouth didn't smile. It stretched, wider and wider, until it wasn't a mouth anymore. It was just an open, endless void. I stumbled back, heart slamming in my chest. I left the hotel that night and never returned. I quit the next morning. But sometimes, in storms, I dream of that hallway, of that door, of that room that waits patient and cold. When I was 9 years old, I made a new friend. Her name was Claire. She lived in the house directly across from ours, an old Victorian with faded green shutters and a leaning porch. It was the kind of house adults called a fixer-upper, but to me, it looked like something out of a storybook. Or maybe a nightmare. Claire was pale, almost ghostly, with long dark hair that hung in her face. She wore the same dress every day, a white one with little blue flowers, old-fashioned like something from a black and white photo. She never wore shoes, even when the pavement was hot enough to sizzle. I was the only one she ever talked to. She first appeared at her upstairs window. I was riding my bike in circles on our driveway when I noticed her watching me. I waved. She didn't wave back, not at first, but she kept staring, wide-eyed and still. Finally, she lifted her hand slowly and returned the wave. That night, she came over. I was sitting on the porch steps, eating a popsicle, and she just appeared at the bottom of the stairs. I blinked. "Hi, you live across the street?" She nodded. "Wanna play?" We played tag in the yard. She was fast, but she never ran past the sidewalk. When I asked why, she said, "I don't go home after dark. It's mean in there." I didn't understand what she meant, but she looked so serious I didn't ask again. Over the next few days, we became inseparable. We played every afternoon, jump rope, hide and seek, sidewalk chalk. She liked to draw strange symbols, crooked circles with X in the center, stick figures without faces. She said they were protection drawings. I thought it was just make-believe. One afternoon, I asked if she wanted to sleep over. Her eyes lit up. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "I'll ask my mum." My mum was in the kitchen making dinner. When I mentioned Claire, she paused. "Claire who?" "Claire, she lives across the street." Her face went pale. "Honey, that house has been empty for years." I laughed, thinking she was messing with me. "No, it hasn't. I've been playing with her all week." She knelt down, serious. "That house was boarded up after a tragedy. The man who lived there, he wasn't well. He hurt his daughter." I stopped smiling. "What was her name?" I asked quietly. My mum hesitated. "Claire." I didn't sleep much that night. I kept glancing out the window. At exactly midnight, I saw her, standing in her window, just watching. She didn't wave, she didn't smile. She just lifted one hand and pressed it against the glass. There was something dark behind her, a shape I couldn't make out, a shadow that didn't move right. Then her window went dark. The next morning, I crossed the street. The porch steps creaked under my sneakers. I peered through the dusty window. Inside, the house was empty, just a husk of old furniture and peeling wallpaper. Cobwebs stretched across the hallway like curtains. It smelled like dust and something sour. But as I turned to leave, I heard something, a soft whisper. "Claire, don't leave me." I ran. For weeks after, I saw Claire everywhere, watching from windows, reflected in puddles, staring at me from my closet door when I forgot to close it. She never spoke again, just stared, always with that hollow expression. Eventually we moved away. My parents never asked me why I stopped going outside. I think they knew something had happened but didn't want to face it. Years passed. I'm 25 now. I hadn't thought about Claire in ages, until last month, when I went home to help my mum pack up the old house. She's moving into a condo now, something smaller, quieter. On my last night there, I took one final walk through the neighborhood. Nostalgia hit hard as I passed my old sidewalk chalk spots and the tree I used to climb. Then I found myself in front of the green house. It looked even worse now, shingles falling off, porch collapsed, windows boarded, except one. The upper right window had been cleared. Clean, no dust, no boards. And in the glass, a handprint, small, child-sized. I stared for what felt like an hour before I finally turned away. But just as I did, I heard something soft and familiar drift across the street, carried on the wind like a secret. "Wanna play?" Every summer until I was 17, I stayed at my grandfather's farm in Nebraska. It was the kind of place where the horizon was just a line the sun dragged itself across each day, and the only sounds at night were the chirping of crickets and the wind through the fields. My grandfather had one rule, and he didn't say it like a suggestion. He said it like a warning. Don't go into the cornfield after dark. He'd look you right in the eye, his sun-leathered face drawn serious. Things get lost in there, he said once, and not all of them are animals. I always figured it was just a farm version of a bedtime story, something to keep dumb kids like me from wandering off and breaking our necks. until that one July night when I ignored him. I was 17, angry over a stupid fight with my cousin. The air was thick with heat even after the sun went down, and I wanted to walk it off. The moon was nearly full, and the cornfield shimmered under its light like waves on a black ocean. I didn't mean to go in far, just a few rows. The stalks were tall, well above my head, and dense. As soon as I stepped in, the sound of the crickets faded, muffled by the green walls around me. The dirt path between the rows felt narrow, almost shrinking with each step. I kept telling myself I'd turn back after 10 paces. But then I heard it. A whisper. At first I thought it was wind. But it wasn't, it was a voice. Low, feminine, delicate. "Come," I froze. My heart knocked in my chest. "Hello," I called out, half laughing. "Someone there?" No answer. Then again, closer this time. "Come." I turned to leave, but the rows behind me didn't look right. The path I'd just walked down was gone. Or maybe I'd turned and hadn't realized it. I called out louder, my voice starting to tremble. "Grandpa." The corn rustled gently, not from the wind. Something was moving in there. Crunch, crunch, slow footsteps on dry earth. I spun in circles, trying to get my bearings, trying to find the moon, but it was gone. Swallowed by thick clouds that rolled in without warning. Darkness wrapped around me like wet cloth. Then I heard it again. A third whisper, right behind my ear. "Stay." I ran. I didn't care which direction, just away. Corn leaves slapped my face, tugged at my arms. I stumbled, tripped, got up again. The whisper followed, now laughing, just under the sound of my breathing. And then I saw her. A small figure, standing perfectly still between the rows. A girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. She wore a white dress stained brown at the hem. Her feet were bare and dirty. Her head tilted slightly as she looked at me. She had no eyes. Where they should have been was only smooth skin, but she smiled, wide, too wide, and she raised one hand, palm facing me. I never found my way out. I screamed and turned. The corn behind me parted, and suddenly the porch light of my grandfather's farmhouse glowed in the distance. I ran like hell. I burst from the cornfield, soaked in sweat and shaking so hard I collapsed on the lawn. My grandfather was already on the porch, shotgun resting in the crook of his arms. He didn't say anything, just nodded once and went back inside. We never talked about it. I wanted to believe it was a hallucination, a panic attack, something logical. But I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her again, standing in the corn, smiling, waiting. The next morning, my grandfather handed me a mug of coffee and sat beside me on the steps. "You saw her, didn't you?" I hesitated. "The girl." He nodded. "She's been there a long time. Some say she got lost and starved. Others say something else found her out there, something that wore her face when it came back." I didn't ask for details. I left that summer and didn't return for years. But last week, I got the call. My grandfather passed away in his sleep. Peaceful, they said. I came back for the funeral, and last night I found myself sitting on that same porch, staring at the field under a silver moon. The corn's grown high again, and tonight I swear I heard it, the whisper. "Come." I've been a 911 dispatcher for over 12 years. I've heard every kind of call you can imagine: accidents, domestic violence, overdoses, even suicides. You learn to compartmentalize, to stay calm even when the caller isn't. You're their lifeline, their only connection to help. You can't panic. But there's one night I'll never forget. One call that still clings to me like smoke in my lungs. It's the only time I've ever felt afraid during a call, truly bone-deep afraid. It was a Friday night, technically early Saturday morning, around 2:10 a.m. The calls usually slow down by then. People are either home, passed out, or tucked in. I was sipping bad coffee and reading an old paperback when the phone lit up. I answered the way I always do. 911. What is your emergency? Please, I need help. Ma'am, are you safe right now? There's something in the house. It got in. Is someone trying to break in? No, she said quickly. No, it's not someone. It's not human. That gave me pause. Mental health crisis, maybe. Hallucination. But her voice didn't sound detached or confused. It sounded terrified. Okay, can you give me your address? She rattled it off. I recognized the street, quiet suburban area, nothing remarkable. I flagged it for priority response and dispatched a unit immediately. Can you describe what you're seeing? I saw it in the hallway. It was tall, and its face, oh God, its face, it wasn't right. It wasn't there, just this blackness where it should have been. Is anyone with you? My daughter. She's 8. We're in her bedroom. I locked the door, but it's trying to get in. In the background, I could hear her daughter whimpering. And something else. Thumps. Slow and deliberate, like footsteps on hardwood. Then, a rattle. Metal on metal. The doorknob. Mom, stay calm. Officers are on their way. They'll be there very soon. It's turning the knob, she whispered. It knows we're in here. It's... Her breath caught. Oh God, it just said my name. I froze. You heard it speak? Not out loud, in my head. I glanced at the dispatch screen. 2 units were en route. ETA 6 minutes, longest 6 minutes of my life. Okay, I want you to take deep breaths, I told her. You're doing great. Keep your daughter close. Don't open that door. I think it wants her, she said suddenly. I think it came for her. The line crackled with silence. Then there was a loud clank. What was that? She didn't answer. More rustling. Then clear as day, I heard her whisper. The doorknob just fell off. My stomach twisted. Mom? She didn't respond. I could hear her breathing, sharp and quick, like she was hyperventilating. It's here. The line went dead. I called back. No answer. The officers arrived 2 minutes later. I held my breath, watching the screen for an update. Then the radio crackled. Dispatch, be advised, front door was locked. Had to break in, no visible signs of forced entry. We're inside now, conducting a sweep. I exhaled, but only slightly. We found the mother and child. Bedroom in the rear. The child is conscious, hiding under the bed. Mother is unresponsive, requesting medical. Unresponsive, I repeated aloud, though no one was listening. She was dead. The paramedics said there were no signs of trauma, nothing wrong with her physically. She was healthy, no drugs, no known conditions. Autopsy said it was stress-induced cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome. She died from fear. The daughter was mostly silent when officers questioned her. She said the thing came through the door without opening it. She said it bent the shadows around itself and smiled without a face. And then she said, it told Mummy she wasn't allowed to leave. That part haunts me. That call became a silent footnote. The department never followed up, no further investigations. It was written off as cardiac arrest in high-stress situation, but I've never forgotten it. Neither has the responding officer. I ran into him at a bar a year later. He told me the bedroom was ice cold when they entered, despite the thermostat reading 74 degrees Fahrenheit. The doorknob was lying perfectly in the middle of the floor, like it had been placed there gently. I don't believe in ghosts, he told me, but that night, I don't know, man. Something was in that house. Neither of us spoke for a while after that. You know, I still take night shifts sometimes, even after all these years. It's like, I still hear people scream, I still hear the panic and pain. But you know, no voice has ever stayed with me the way hers did. Not because of what she said, but because of how real it felt. The raw terror. The hopelessness. She wasn't crazy. She didn't imagine it. Whatever she saw that night, whatever she felt through that door, it was real enough to kill her. And sometimes, when I'm alone at night in the call center, I think about that little girl, grown up now. I wonder if the man with no face still visits her dreams, or worse, if he's still waiting. My parents always described themselves as skeptics. Ghost stories were fun, sure, but neither of them truly believed in the supernatural. That changed the summer we stayed in the old French mill. It was a family vacation, just the 4 of us, my mum, dad, younger sister, and me. My dad's colleague had offered us use of their countryside cottage in the south of France. It sounded picturesque, a stone mill house nestled in a forested valley, bordered by a winding stream and dense with ivy and thyme. The only catch? The place had been unoccupied for years. After a long, exhausting 2-day drive from the UK, we finally arrived. The air was thick with heat, but as we pulled into the shadowed driveway, the temperature seemed to drop. The cottage stood hunched in a clearing like it had grown from the rock itself, weather-worn and ancient, with a crumbling water wheel attached to its moss-covered side. The heavy silence of the place was unsettling, broken only by the quiet babble of the stream nearby. Inside, the cottage smelled faintly of stone and something else. Like mildew. It wasn't foul, just old and damp. The thick walls muffled sound, and though the house was small, voices barely carried from room to room. My sister and I ran around choosing rooms while our parents tried to figure out how to get the heater working. Everything inside was cold, unexpectedly cold, even for a shaded cottage in summer. We spent the evening in the lounge, huddled around a log fire that struggled to take hold. My dad eventually got an old cassette player working, and we listened to a couple of audiobooks to wind down. By 10:30, we were all wiped out. My sister and I each took a bedroom upstairs, and my parents stayed in the large master room at the end of the hall. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to a strange, low creak. I assumed it was the old floorboards expanding and rolled over, but my parents, well, they had a different kind of night. According to them, they both woke up suddenly around midnight. Not gradually, not because of a noise, just awake, like something had nudged their minds. My dad sat up first, trying to adjust to the dark, and that's when he saw the figure. The door to their room was open just slightly, but enough to see a tall, dark silhouette standing in the hallway. Not moving, just standing, watching. At first, my dad thought it might have been me or my sister, but as his eyes adjusted, he realized the figure was too tall, taller than anyone in our family, and unnaturally still. He said the figure's head was cocked slightly, as if studying them. My mum, now fully awake, saw it too. She said a chill ran down her spine, but oddly, she didn't feel afraid, just frozen. The air in the room had shifted, become heavier somehow. Neither of them could move or speak. They watched, breath held, as the figure continued to stare for what felt like several minutes. Then, as silently as it had appeared, it turned and walked away, though no footsteps could be heard on the old wooden floor. It didn't vanish or evaporate into thin air. It just walked away, slowly, like a man satisfied with what he had seen. My dad got up, finally able to move, and looked into the hallway. Nothing. He checked on us. My sister was fast asleep, curled up in a pile of stuffed animals, and I was snoring with one arm dangling off the bed. The doors were all locked, no signs of entry, nothing out of place. They didn't wake us. They didn't talk about it right away. In fact, it wasn't until the next morning, when sunlight was streaming through the kitchen windows and the cottage felt inexplicably warmer, that they spoke about what they'd seen. "I thought I dreamed it," my mum said over breakfast, eyes still puffy from lack of sleep. "But the moment I looked at you, I knew you saw it too." My dad nodded. It was real. That was the end of it. No more sightings, no more cold, oppressive air. The fire crackled properly the next evening. The heaters worked without issue. The house felt lighter, not just physically but emotionally, as if something had been testing us that first night. And once it was satisfied, it let us be. We spent the rest of the holiday enjoying the countryside, visiting markets, and taking long walks. But we always made sure to be back before dark. It wasn't until we returned home, and my dad casually mentioned the experience to his colleague, that we learned the truth. The man grew quiet and then said, "You saw him then?" "Excuse me?" "The one who guards the house," he said. "He always checks on new visitors. Most people don't see him. You must have been sensitive." My dad didn't know what to say, neither did we. But we never went back. Even now, years later, my parents swear it wasn't a dream. And every time I think of that house, deep in its hollow with the broken water wheel and the thick forest, I get that same cold feeling in my chest, as if someone, somewhere is still watching, just to make sure we're worthy. The house was over 100 years old, tucked in the heart of Butte, Montana, an aging mining town full of crumbling charm and buried stories. My husband and I bought it not long after we were married, drawn in by its Victorian turret, its iron gates, and a price that seemed too good to be true. Looking back, it probably was. The house had a stone foundation, a deep, unfinished dirt basement, and windows that seemed just slightly too small to let in enough light. Still, I loved it. It felt like a home with character, with history. We moved in while our first daughter was still a baby. She was too young to walk, so for those first few months we all slept on a futon in the living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and stacks of baby clothes. At first it was just the little things, drafts that came from nowhere, the sense that the house never really warmed up no matter how high we turned the thermostat. I chalked it up to the age of the place. Old homes have their quirks, I told myself. After a few months we moved upstairs. We didn't have much furniture yet, so we slept on mattresses on the floor, my husband and I in one room, and our daughter in the room across the hall. I'd leave her door open a crack so I could peek in on her during the night. She always slept soundly. It wasn't until our second daughter was born, about 5 years later, that things began to change. From the time she was a toddler, she was drawn to the back of the house, specifically the laundry room. It was an odd, narrow little room, clearly a later addition. It had one high, foggy window, a washer and dryer, and a small wooden door that led out to the overgrown garden. It always felt off to me, colder than the rest of the house, and heavy somehow. Still, she loved it. She'd sit on the floor and talk to the other girl. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" I asked her one morning as I folded towels. "My friend," she said casually. "She lives here." I laughed it off at first. Every kid has imaginary friends, right? But she never gave this one a name, just called her the other girl. And the way she talked about her wasn't playful. She described her as quiet, with hair that covers her eyes, and a long white dress that's dirty at the bottom. It unsettled me, but I didn't want to feed into it. I figured it was just a phase. Then came the whisper. I was alone in the laundry room one early morning sorting a load before the kids woke up. I was half asleep staring into a pile of socks when I heard it, soft and unmistakable. "Daughter Mommy," right behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, expecting to see one of the girls. But the room was empty. I checked the hallway. Nothing. I ran upstairs. Both girls were still sound asleep in bed. That was the first time I felt real fear in the house. From then on, strange things began happening with growing frequency. Dishes would crash in the kitchen when no one was in there. Glasses we'd left neatly stacked would be shattered in the sink when we returned from errands. Lights flickered, especially near the laundry room and the back stairwell. My husband, who had always rolled his eyes at ghost stories, started to come around. One night, he was home alone. I'd taken the girls to visit my sister. He stayed behind to finish up work. When we came back, he was pale and silent. He said he'd been upstairs working when he heard the unmistakable sound of someone, many someones, walking downstairs. Heavy steps, deliberate. He thought maybe we'd come back early, but when he went to greet us, the house was empty. Then all the dishes in the sink clattered, as if someone had grabbed the edge of the counter and shook it violently. Still, we stayed. We told ourselves it was just the quirks of an old house. But the worst thing was the creaking. Every night at 3 a.m., and I mean every single night, our bedroom door would creak open, slowly, always the same time. It didn't matter if we locked it. It didn't matter if we braced it shut. It always opened. Then one night I was up late doing dishes. My husband was working late at the office. I was alone. The house was quiet, too quiet. The only sound was the hum of the fridge and the soft clink of water in the sink. And then I felt it. Someone walked right behind me. I froze. Every nerve in my body lit up. I turned slowly, expecting to see someone. But again, the room was empty. I didn't sleep that night. When my husband came home, I begged him never to leave me alone in that house again. When our oldest turned 10, we decided to move to Pullman. We didn't even finish renovating the old house. We packed what we could and sold it off fast. My daughter's favorite part of the move. "Mum," she said the first night in our new place, "I love that this house is new. Nothing's hiding here." I didn't ask her what she meant by hiding. I didn't want to know. To this day, I don't know what we shared our home with, but it wasn't imaginary, and I don't think it was ever just a friend.